Hey guys, it's Core Ross and World 6 News. Today we are talking about the next 10 years of Rainbow Six Siege, as the developers have said that they plan to go for another decade. And of course, we're currently in year 8 of Rainbow Six Siege right now. And first of all, let's do a little history lesson on myself. So when I decided to run this YouTube channel full time, things just kind of came together at the right time. I had been a graphic designer for a decade, and the company I was currently with, where I'd been there like a year and a half, they went bankrupt, and that was it, job over. And then the YouTube channel just took off, and I'd been doing it for like a good 5 years before that, I think, and just to learn video editing and audio. But the crazy thing is, of course, when this YouTube channel kicked off and I decided to do it full time, I did not expect to still be doing it 8 years later. That was not part of the plan. I thought Siege, if it became popular, because when I started this YouTube channel full time, Siege was not popular, but I thought if it becomes popular, it'll be popular for a couple of years like most games, and then, I can find another graphic design job after that. And here we are now 8 years later with what is now my longest ever job, which is crazy. The one before that was about 7 years, but there was a gap in the middle, so technically it wasn't really as long. Whereas now I've got this job, which is a full-time YouTuber, and I've been doing it 8 years. It is freaking weird, but it has been an experience, and it's been a lot of fun to at least try it to my best of my ability. And to think I might still be doing this in a decade's time seems very unlikely, but let's watch the clip of the developers talking about the next 10 years, and then we're going to kind of deep dive into what I think may happen and where I see things going in the future.
So we're already moving up to year 8 of Siege, and we are so committed to this game. We're already looking at the next 10 years of Siege. We know all of you have invested so much time, so much love into this game that we will not abandon it. We are here to stay, and we love you all.
So now I want to break this down, the next 10 years of Rainbow Six Siege. So first of all, if I wasn't a content creator, this would still be very interesting to me, because to me, I'm quite loyal to games and I can play them for quite a long time. The biggest one other than Siege would be Kerbal Space Program. I have played the crap out of that. If you don't know, there's basically probably thousands of videos on this channel that are Kerbal Space Program, and I've also started to do a whole new series on a completely different channel because I just love that game as well. But let's talk about Siege, right? So from a content creator and a player point of view, this is how I thought it would go back in the day. So I thought this game would be popular for maybe a couple of years because I seen potential in it back then. It did launch as a dead game. It was terrible, but they brought it back up and they were successful, and they were to keep it going for quite a successful amount of time. Then we've had this big dip in players over the last couple of years, and recently they've been doing a lot of good stuff to potentially bring players back, and stuff that I thought they could never do, like Mousetrap and things like that. And they also seem to be successful at it, which is weird because such big features in Siege, historically for me anyway, were always quite disappointing and very buggy. And Mousetrap right now has worked way above my expectations. But anyway, back to how I thought things were going to go. So even up until the beginning of this year, I assumed that Rainbow Six Siege would start to kind of tail off, and the content would slowly drop over time until it was just like cosmetics and battle passes to keep the money coming in, but the servers on and the hardcore player base sticking around. And I always used to say that I thought it was going to be like CSGO, where the game would basically be frozen in time for the most part, and its player base would just kind of stick around, that hardcore player base anyway. Now I can't use that anymore as a comparison, because CSGO is back with version 2, and it has, just suddenly reappeared into everyone's psyche with Valve kind of revitalizing it and bringing it back with the new Source engine. So I can't actually use that as a comparison anymore. And as such, it's actually getting hard to really get a comparison like that, because a lot of these old games that have been through so much and have kind of got themselves a good foundation now, they're actually all kind of starting to come back in some way. So for me, the way my thought Siege would go would be just a slow reduction of content over time. And that's what I thought we were seeing with the reduction of operators per year, the reduction in maps and map reworks and operator reworks. That was my assumption, that we were just seeing that overall reduction in actual content, because the game was going to slowly wind down until it got to a point where it would just stabilize at cosmetics and battle passes, and that would be kind of it, and the game would just kind of tick over for the, it would, like, the servers would probably still be on for decades into the future, but just with a far smaller player base. However, I'm starting to change my opinion on this. And the reason is we're getting a lot less playable content. So less operators, less maps, less reworks, all that stuff. But the really kind of base stuff, the foundation stuff, is starting to get a lot of extra work put into it, like Mousetrap. I think that's a really good example because that has been in development for, I think, at least 3 years. And that's not being cheap. That is some of the highest qualified engineers and developers possible working on that problem full time for about 3 years. So you're talking about a huge investment that obviously could have gone to new operators, new maps, or whatever, and it's gone into something that you can't play. You can feel the difference if you're, playing on console in the higher ranks, but the actual, playability of Mousetrap, of course, doesn't exist. There is no Mousetrap gameplay, but it does make the game better. So I am starting to wonder now if the content reduction I've been seeing over the years, and just assuming that was the natural process for Siege, was actually a bit of a mirage, and the reality is that it still has a pretty good amount of funding, and reducing down the operators and the maps and stuff like that means resources have gone to something else rather than resources just simply being taken away. But then we do also have the reality of Ubisoft's current situation where they're not doing great. They're just not launching any good games. It's also globally an issue with all game development right now where a lot of games get stuck, and when they finally do get released, they're not very good. But this was also the case for Siege when it launched. It was launch broken, it was not good, and it, really in reality, the way it launched, it should have died and never came back. But somehow they did manage to pull it through. And I think at this point in time that Siege is probably still Ubisoft's moneymaker. I think that's where they get the majority of their income. But I could be wrong. I know that they do have For Honor. That actually does surprisingly well and is still getting new seasons even today. They've got The Crew and stuff like that that also continues to get support even to today. And they wouldn't be getting support if they weren't making some money off it. So I do think Siege is one of Ubisoft's biggest moneymakers, although Ubisoft needs another moneymaker, and it probably won't be Skull and Bones. It could be XDefiant, so that could be the one that actually manages to capture some of the market share of Call of Duty, and if they did that, that would make them financially much better off. But yeah, I'm kind of hoping, and looks like Siege is going to go on into the long term. Now I don't know if I'm going to be a full-time YouTuber in 5 years time or what, but it's kind of cool to see that Siege will continue, because obviously even if I'm not a content creator for this game, I'm going to be playing it, and I'm hoping it'll still be around with enough players and hopefully enough casual players that I can go up against. So fingers crossed that it does continue. But yeah, maybe I was wrong that this game would tail off in the way I thought, and I thought was already happening, but we'll have to see. I think the next couple of years are going to be critical to Siege, because they're going to need to show that they can deliver more gameplay stuff, especially the story elements. The story elements are still too much outside of the game. They need to bring that into the game in some way, whether it be events or whatever, but they need to bring it in. I think there's also too much focus on the Battle Pass, which makes sense for Ubisoft, obviously a big moneymaker there, but because this is it, sometimes people just tell me that they play the game for the Battle Pass to progress through it. I wish there was something else there, like Prestige and Operators or something. Just something other than the Battle Pass being people's main reason to play the game. Or story elements or whatever you could throw in there to really bulk out Siege. But I gotta say, I'm quite impressed with where Siege is. I think it still has major issues right now. The biggest problem is server issues. I think once the server issues are fixed, something else will pop up as the biggest issue. But certainly Siege doesn't seem to be in quite a buggy mess of a position where it used to be. And things like Mousetrap, which I think if that was launched in year 2 of Rainbow Six Siege, it would have been buggy to all hell. And it's been launched in year 8, and for some reason it seems to be okay, and it hasn't totally gone mental or anything like that. So I like where Siege is, but this is critical time. And I'd love to know in the comments though, because this is an open discussion, on what you think will happen next with Rainbow Six Siege. Give me your best guess at what a year 10 and a year 15 roadmap Rainbow Six Siege looks like. for instance, does it go down to 2 operators per year or 1, or what is the big difference? Or maybe there's no new operators and it just goes down to just reworking operators constantly every single season, or maybe it is just down to cosmetics and battle passes and the game just kind of ticks over slowly over the years with its hardcore player base remaining, so that Ubisoft can keep the servers on and make themselves a little bit of a profit while the development is just basically artwork for the game.